Okay. Now let's run this with this new input. Let's see. Oh. So in Malik's input, this algorithm works, right? This is the importance of once you wrote your program, you want to test it with a few different inputs. Well, we don't know yet why it works in his, but we can try to get there. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Add a 0. Just another 0 anywhere here? Yeah. Let's see. Oh, right. So Ken discovered that when we add another 0, then it breaks, right? Because we have this here. So wait, does it matter where I add it, or does it matter? So if it's like this, then it's not. It's gonna work. Okay. Now let's find out why exactly. Right? Why is it that a 0 next to another 0 is left? So this is somewhat of what Cam was suggesting earlier, where when we remove, then what is I going to be equal to, since splice actually modified the array. So when we have something like this, something we could do is, let's console log here the array. Actually, I want to console log I, so I'm gonna do string interpolation that we learned. I want to log I equal, or actually I equal I. And then I also want to log the array next to that. So I'm going to do that here. And then I do that. Let's see what we have here. So this, by logging on line 8, we're going to get an insight as to what's going on inside. Let's see. Okay, let's see. So when I is, actually, let me put this outside of the if statement. Okay, so I starts at 0, right? We're not surprised about that. The array when I is 0 is still the same. Actually, then when I is 1, the array is still the same, right? Then when we move on to I2, now we see that a removal or something happened here, right? This 0 was removed and put somewhere else. It was put at the end, right? That makes sense. So this 0 that we had here was removed by the splice and was put at the end. So let's see. Now I is 3. So let's do this even more verbose. Let's do element is equal to, so that we know here, array at I. So we know what element we're currently looking at. So let me close this. Okay. So when I is 0, the element is 8. That makes sense. When I is 1, the element will be 0. We're looking at this. Then we run into the if statement because the element is indeed 0. And then we splice at that index, at index 1. We remove 1, we remove that 0. And at the end, after that, we push that to the end. We push that 0 to the end. So that means that on the next iteration, when I is 2, we see here that the 0 was removed from here and put to the end, right? Is that making sense so far? So let's see what happens when I is 3. So I is 3. No, actually, when I is 2. Now that's the element I2 will be another 0, right? Because this 0 was removed. This 0 was removed and added to the end. Therefore, now index 2 is this 0, the 0 next to the 9. Because every slice moved, completely removed the 0 that was in the middle here and moved the 9 to the left, right? So now when I is 2, instead of I being 9, because of the removal, now I at index 2 is this 0. So if the element is 0, then we're going to do splice and put it to the end, right? So we do that in the next iteration. When we come in, we see that 0 from here was removed and put to the end. This zero from here, because the element is currently 0, was removed and put to the end. So now I is 3. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So the element is 13. That's not a 0. Then we just move on. The next iteration, index 4, element is 0 in this case. We splice here. We move to the end, and as we can see in the next iteration, now that 0 is removed. But do we see where this 0 was left here and forever? So you. I think we should still get the same. Let's see. But before we go into that, I want to make sure that we see how we jumped to 0 because of the array slice was modifying the original array. And then let's look at that once more. So the first, we're at index 2. The index 2 element is this 0, right? We remove that and we put it to the end. And then it will look like that after. But the problem is that now I moves to 3. And because they were 2 zeros together, then this, the 0 that was at index 3 now is at index 2. And we're looking currently at index 3, right? And at index 3, we have the element 13. So we just jumped over this 0 just because they were next to each other. How does that feel? I know that it's kind of complicated. I see some knobs. Let's see. Yeah.
So it moved over it because it's
So what does splice do? Removes. Slice copy splice. How many it removes? Yeah. So here, what happens here is when I is 2, index 2 is this 0, right? And then we're asking splice, okay, remove this 0, put it to the end. Well, splice will just remove it. And then the push in line 10 is the one that's going to add it to the end. But when we're here, I index I2, we have this 0. We ask splice to remove it, then it will remove it, and then we are left with something like this. And then the push will add it to the end. But the thing is, after the splice, we have something like this. Only this. And what happens is, we were at index 2, right, in here. But now, I is going to move to index 3. And then at index 3, we have the 13. We should have checked index 2 again to make sure that that was, if that was a 0, then repeat the steps.
So you have to make it go.
Yeah, Dinesh. If I change the if, wait, can you see that a little bit louder? Oh, here, a while. Let's see. So Janesh suggests we add a while here. So while the current element is a 0, then keep removing it and add it to the end. Oh, what's going on? So my program is hang and it's using 97% of my CPU. It has been running for 40 seconds and so on. So what I have is an infinite loop. Well, I have that infinite loop because of this. Wow. Because when we reach the end, when we reach this, right, element will always be equal to 0. And then we keep doing that forever. So we couldn't do that. So let's just, in the interest of time, how could we solve this in a more concise way without having to maybe even use splice? So let's remove this. Let's put back the if statement. So we learned a lesson which is check your program with different inputs. Don't rely on the first one. Let's see, any other fellow has any suggestions that we should try? Finish. If we turn it into a string and then we do what? Split join. I think that could really work. Yeah. Sorry here. Counting backwards. Oh yeah, that was so your suggestion. If we start at the array length -1, and then we go while I is greater or equal to 0. So here we're gonna start from the end, and let's see if that gives us any different result. Less. Good catch. But we're still gonna do the splice. No splice. With splice? Okay. Let's see. It works. Oh, but that's because I tried with the original example. Oh. Right, and then, oh, so it works, right? Right, let's see why it works. Uh-huh. So does what Sergio says make sense? It's pushing to the end, but we're already moving away from that, right? Because I is starting at the length. So let's see what we have here. For instance, I started at 8, so that means we have 9 elements here, right? This is at index 0, the 10. So element 10 at index 8. The element is not equal to 0, so we don't do anything. We just move to the next one. Now I is 7. So here we're going backwards. I is 7, the element is 0. Then we do, if the element is 0, then splice there and remove 1. So let's see what that will look like here. This is the current element. We take that out. We can see, oh right, we have 3 zeros here. This 0 is removed and put to the end. It's removed by splice, but it's put to the end by the push. Now we lower I to be equal to 6. Now at index 6, what do we have? So we have, it should be this one, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So this one is 0 again. So we just repeat the step. Splice, remove it. Now we can see here that it's no longer there, and add it to the end. Now we lower I. Now it's equal to 5. The element is 0. Right? That will be this 0. We ask splice to remove it, and then we add it to the end because we're going backwards, we never had those weird jumps that we were seeing when we were going forward, right? Right, exactly. So before we were pushing to the end and we were trying to move in that direction. In a weird box, what we could do is we end up pushing, and then if we're moving to the end, but we're also pushing, then we might never reach the end, right? That'll be a weird bug. But in here, we start at the end, and then if there's a 0 here, that 0 will just get put here. Then we move to, in this case, to the left. If there's a 0 here, it just gets moved this side, and then we keep moving like that. Yeah, Cam?
I had another first thing, like when you're in the statement, this like I maybe like go back, skip this, go back. So say when you take the 0 out and the next number is moved over to 0. Instead of moving on to this 1, you stay in 0 on this I.
I think I'm not understanding. Cool, that's it. That's another thing. The code.
It's more work because you have to push.
Okay. Right. This is kind of similar to what you. Right. Then removing here. The problem with this is.
You can't push this out.
Right. Any other questions before we get into a whole new topic that is objects? Let's take a 5-minute break. Be back here at 12:20.
1 o'clock, we come back at 2, right?
Yeah.
For some reason, I can't watch my glasses.
Sorry. No.
Okay, so can I just get a show of hands who read the lecture before coming today? Very few. Oh, well, about 3. No. That's not half. That's about 33 precisely. How do you know? Okay. I was gonna say less than half. Okay, so today we're gonna learn about objects. And the goals are to understand what objects are in JavaScript, how can we create one, how can we modify them, what are they good for, why would you want to use them if you can use arrays, right? And let me pull up here my notes. Oh. This will be week 4. We're already in week 4. It's crazy. Well, depending on how weeks, weeks start on Sunday. Okay. Right, so there are going to be some vocabulary that we're going to learn, which is objects, but it's dot notation. There are another notation that I forgot to put here, which is square bracket notation. Let me just do Vim objects. Square brackets. Square brackets notation, key value, and what properties are. Okay, so some of you might have heard the term that JavaScript is an object-oriented programming language. What do we think that means? Can we speculate as to what that actually means? Whatever comes to mind, what do you think is object-oriented? Char? It's a language that builds programs based on objects, sort of, yeah. It uses a lot of objects, Hugo. No, I haven't said what an object is. The question is, what do we think object-oriented means? Yeah, JavaScript is an object-oriented programming language. There are others like Python, Ruby. Yeah. Right, it operates around objects. So let's see what an object is, right? So a JavaScript object is the idea and the data structure of how we can encapsulate state and operations within an object, right? Within something. And we already have seen an object that we call an array, right? So the idea is an array in JavaScript is an object, and we can tell because if we do type of array, we true reason around objects like in the real world, in the sense of, I put an example early on where we were exploring the properties of an array, right? And then we found that an array had the length, and then we could access that length by saying array.length, right? So, and the other example was we could describe that board, right? and we could say that board is an object. In the real world, it is an object, right? And it has some properties. It has width, height, material that it was made of, maybe the year that it was made of. Yep. Or the color, right? So the idea of objects in JavaScript is very similar. Is how can we represent that board? How can we represent a person? How can we represent an order in our programming language, JavaScript? So, any questions so far? Okay, so let's see. Again, the reason for that is because for us humans, it's easier to reason about objects, even in programming languages, where we can say array.length, for instance, right? We know that it's the length property of the array object, right? So let's see how can we create anything. And also, like as a side note, almost everything from here on in, almost everything you're gonna see in JavaScript under the hood is an object. It's and you can tell it's an object because you will have properties like length and some others that you can create yourself. It's probably going to have methods or that you can call and stuff like that. Right, and more specifically, like jumping more onto what a JavaScript object is, and in general, objects in programming languages are a collection of key value pairs. And then what does that mean? That means that if we have an object, let's say an apple, to create an object, we have the special syntax, which is curly brackets. This is how we create objects in JavaScript with curly brackets. This is how we can tell that this is an object and not an array. So I said an object in JavaScript is a collection of key value pairs. So what do I mean by that? So let's say we're writing a program that is, let's say we were tasked with creating a shopping cart, right? And then in a shopping cart, we want to include different products, vegetables, and stuff like that, right? So one such product could be an apple. So to start doing that, we could say apple and then open curly bracket, and then a property of an apple. What would be a property? Color, right? Let's say it's a red apple. And this is now with what you just said. You just gave me the first key value pairs. So what is on the left of the column we call a key, and what's on the right we call a value. So we have a key value pair. The key is always to the left of the column, and to the right we have the value. Now, if we want to add more keys to this object, we could use a comma. So in this sense, in this case, keys and property are two interchangeable terminology. Sometimes you're going to hear me say the key color of the apple object, or the color property of the apple object. Right, so let's see, we have an apple could have a ripeness level. Could be ripe. Any other properties? Say that again. Variety? Oh, okay. But well, sorry, that will be in the ripeness, right? That will be another, if an apple is rotten, then that will be kind of a level of ripeness, right? Yeah, Renee? A type? Right. What are some types of apples, right? And well, I want to say that in here we are creating 3 keys: color, ripeness, and type. And the values are red, ripe, and gala. And these values are what? What type are these values? Strings, right? Because they're in quotes. But they could also be numbers. Let's say, does a number, imagine we had quantity of how many we have in stock, right? We could have, let's say we have 5 in stock. Then we close the curly brackets, and that finalizes our object. So now if I do console.log apple, I see my object log to the screen, and it will look like this. Just sometimes exactly the same as the way we wrote it. We have curly brackets, keys. In this case, keys are white. The values will be red if there's, will be green if it's a string, blue if, not blue, yellow if it's a number. So what objects have allowed us to do is to describe the real world in a programming language. And you can imagine the power of that if you're building a video game, for instance, which is it's essentially an emulation of the real world, right? This apple here that in our shopping cart example will be an item in the shopping cart or an item in the shelf. Let's say in a video game, it could be an item that the player can pick up and eat and then restore their health, for instance, right? So that's the power of objects in JavaScript, that they allow us to model the real world, saying this apple has these properties, and that's what they're equal to. We're going to be dealing a lot with objects. As I said, almost everything in JavaScript is an object, some way or another. And then we can see that objects are one of the 7 types, 7 or 6, I forgot, that we saw right at the beginning, where we said type will be string, number, undefined, and object. I think function is the other one. So this is one of the types. So if we do type of apple, we get an object. Right. So was everyone able to write an object and console log it? Okay. Let's see. Karen, could you give me, how can we distinguish this? How can we tell that this is an object? Some of the qualities. Starts with curly brackets. Okay. Say that again. It contains keys and values. How many keys does this object has? 4, right? And then how can they distinguish the key from the value? Say that a little bit louder. Right, they're separated by the colon. The one on the left is the key. The one on the right is the value. And how do we separate key value pairs from each other? With commas, right? Let's see what happens if we forget to do that. Actually, I should be doing this in a text editor. Let's see. No. And then here I'm going to create a file called objects. gonna open that with this code. Okay, so let me transfer my apple here. Actually, I'm gonna can just copy from here. Right, and you could write those on one line, but you can see here that you could also do it just in one line. JavaScript doesn't care about that. What would be the advantages of multiple lines? What do you think? A little bit louder? It's easier to read, right? So another programming can just read it faster and better, not get confused as to how many keys there are, what are their values. Right, this apple, for instance, has an owner. For some reason, maybe we wanted to keep track of. If we were building, for instance, a video game, right? Tomer will be one of the players. He's the owner of this apple, for instance. Feel free to raise your hand with any questions at any point. Okay, so that's how we could describe an apple, which is a real object, and model it as an apple in a programming language, right? And we can see that, well, we could have different kinds of apples, right? So this could be apple 1, apple 2 could be the same one. Well, it's an apple, and how can we tell it's an apple? Like, how can we tell that these two are apples? How can we tell that these two are apples? They're different apples, but they're apples nonetheless. Yeah, Peter? Right, they have the same keys. And they're different because they have different values, right? Cool. So that's sort of a real world example. Again, if you were kind of building a video game or a shopping cart as well. Examples that we could find more commonly is, for instance, if you're building, let's say we're building Seamless or any other online food ordering. We could have a food item, let's say tacos, as an object. Let's do that one. What are properties of tacos? Meat, right? The kind of meat that it has. That could be beef. Or, yeah. What other properties? Shell? Is that like that? Maybe if they're hot, is that like, you could have, say that again? Ripeness? Let's say they're hot, or what, like spicier, that's better. So this could be true or false, right? So if you're building that kind of application, then one of the dishes could look like this, right? Any questions so far? Yeah, Douglas? Right, we could have objects within the same objects. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we said that they start with, we know that they're objects if we have curly brackets. Here's another example, like a person with a first name and a last name. What would be an application that could use this object? Why would I want to create these kind of objects? Sure. The shopping cart, maybe like if it's if this is the person who owns the shopping cart, is that what you mean? Right, like a social media app, for instance, that has your profile. Your profile is probably something like this, an object that has your name, your email, stuff like that. Yeah. Anybody else? Any comments? A hospital, right? If you're dealing with a hospital database, this can be how a patient looks, right? Probably other properties like insurance, stuff like that. Exactly. So probably that's what you look like on Canvas, an object like that. Okay, let's see what we have here. Dot notation, key value pairs. We saw the apples. We know that their curly braces separated, the pairs are separated by commas. Keys are separated from values by the columns. And if we only have this, we end up with an empty object, right? And then we can. An empty object is not very useful, I think. Right? It's good, but again, what objects allow us to do is to model the real world in a computer environment. Okay. So we saw the shopping cart. Right, it could also be a hotel reservation. If you're building Airbnb, then the reservation, the hotels or the places where you stay are probably objects. And almost, as I said, almost everything is an object. Yeah. And the benefits, I want to stress that one more time, is because for us human, it's easier to reason about objects, programming objects that somehow resemble the real world objects. Okay, so I wanted to try this example before we go on to lunch in 15 minutes. Create an object. So first, wait, listen to me very carefully. Create a folder with, let's say, does everyone have a folder called objects that they're working on? So that object, that folder, let's create, I'm trying to see if, okay, let's create a file with your name. Name the file your name. So for instance, for me, it will be Alejandro. I'm gonna put my last name, .js. So create a file like that for yourself. And inside, create an object that describes you with, as we saw here, just like this, first name, last name, and age. Or you could do date of birth, for instance. And if you want to add like a bio, we could do that too. But make sure that you have, actually, we have to agree on the keys that these objects are going to have. So let's agree on first name and last name, maybe date of birth, eye color if you want, and then there's one more, a bio, where you write a small description about yourself. So everyone go and create a file with your name. In that file, put only one object that has first name, last name, key, date of birth, key, maybe DOB, and then a bio key, and then fill in those with your information. So do that, and in the meantime, I'm going to create a Git repo where we're going to upload our code to. Joy? Your name underscore your last name, .js. first and last name like here. Yeah, you could name it anything you want. Yeah. The name of the variable that's holding the object can be person or anything you want. Oh, sorry.
Because I can't type.
Cool. Everyone has their objects? Okay, so make sure that at least first name and last name are this. I encourage you to do bio as well. So after you have your object, make sure you save it. Next step is I'm gonna post this link so that you're gonna clone this repo. You're going to clone this repo. You're going to, that's create a folder, right, with the name of this repo, 6.2 class names. You're going to move your file into this repo. You're going to add it, commit it, and then create a pull request. The way that we have been turning in the assignments. But in this case, it's just to upload your object, and then we're gonna combine them, and we're gonna do something with that. Savita? Right, this is only an exercise. So, okay, so I'm gonna post this link. Okay. Now you do clone. Let's do that in here. So clone that. That's a good question. Are you cloning or forking? Fork is better in this case. So fork it first, and then you clone your copy. So you'll do, first you're gonna do fork. That creates a copy of this repo on your GitHub account, and then you clone that copy. This is the way that we have been turning in the assignments.
Say that again.
I just put it on here, 6.2 web code. So fork the repo first, then clone your copy. So here, I'm gonna do it myself. So I have something, I am in something like this, in a folder called objects. Let me remove this file, which I'm not gonna use. Now let me take my file that I created out. So you're gonna have something like this. You don't even have CX 6.2 class yet. I'm gonna remove that. Oh, I think I didn't took out my object. I have to do it again. Or maybe I have it here. So you created your object. You save it in a folder called objects or wherever you're working. I'm gonna save this. I'm working on a directory called core unit 1 for objects. I'm gonna save it here. Right? So you should have something like this. Objects.js is where I've been writing the code we've been writing in the lesson. This is my lesson plan. And now I have my file alejandrofranco.js that has my object. So the next thing that you're going to do is you go on Slack, you click the link for the repo, and because this is already mine, I think if I do fork, yeah, I could fork it into these other accounts, but I don't want to do that. I see that 23 of you already did it. But then what you will do after you have forked is click on here, clone. And then here, some of you, the ones, you know who you are if you set up SSH. So you could do that if you know who you are. Otherwise, everyone else just use HTTPS, the HTTPS link. Show you that's here. So use the HTTP as you can swap here. But those that use SSH, they know who they are. They use SSH. Everyone else can do HTTPS. So here, I'm going to use this one. So I'm going to my terminal, and then I hit git clone, and I paste my URL. That is cloning everything from my GitHub account to my local computer. Now, when I do ls, I should have a folder 6.2 class names. Right. The next thing that I want to do is move the file with my name into this folder. So I'm going to do that by saying mv for move Alejandro, move it to 6.2, 6.2 class names. Right, so now if I do ls again, now my file is no longer in this folder. Now if I go onto my repo and I do ls, I see that now my file is there. Right? Was everyone able to do that? Move their file to the repo. So now, git added, git commit, and git push. And then create a pull request. So after you have moved your file in, you could do git add. I want to add everything in my current folder. I'm going to do git add, period. I'm going to do git commit -m. I'm going to say object. That's what I did. I added Alejandro's object. Oh, damn it. Have to swap these codes here. Lastly, you're going to do git push to upload your code to GitHub. And then create a pull request against the repo you forked from, which is mine. Yep.
Okay, right. So this is because of the single quote is expecting you to close that code. So for some reason here, because you use single quote here, this one it's saying that this one starts here and ends here. Then it is that other thing. So for canceling that, do Control C. Cancel. Control. That's command.
Control.
Yeah.
Control C, right?
I think you're not clicked in there. No, let's try again. Wait, which one are you trying?
Control C. Sorry.
Right. Now you can try again. Wait, did you move your stuff to CD to 6.2 class names?
Should have. Are you ls?
Oh, so you don't have a git there. Yeah, let's do ls. You have to move on to your class, to 6.2 class names.
I didn't do that?
No, give me one second.
Okay, so after that, after you've created the pull request, then you're free to go to lunch. Once we come back, we're gonna see what we're gonna do with all those objects. Yeah, Peter. The pull request is from yours to mine. So when you create a pull request, you see that it shows you on the left. It should be my repo.
On the right, it should be your repo.
I thought I did it. No.
Okay, yeah. So
Then why isn't it?
because you haven't.
I moved it.
Right. Yes, you did move it correctly. Now CD into 6.2 class names. 6_2. And then you could, now because this folder is a Git repo, you could Git add, Git commit, Git everything else. Git add period, yeah.
So this is what happened. I was on mine. That's your name, not my name.
Oh, okay, no, that's fine. That doesn't matter. What matters is this. That here you see that arrow.
Oh, this is what you meant.
Yeah,
This is right?
that's right. That's you want to merge this to that.
What's a
Sorry.
variable? Is a matter of like capitalize the name?
For you mean the key?
Yeah.
The key, yeah, like that is good. Camel case. Mm-hmm.
What are we doing what do you call that? The thing I was doing today. The professional skills workshop.
Oh, I'm not exactly sure. I'll ask this.
Okay.
I'm gonna get this. Absolutely. And thank you. Right? We'll go call it a day.
Right, yeah. No, I don't see that. Because they set out something called SSH. Oh, I think it was because maybe you moved in HTTP. Yeah, it's not really. When you did one here,
Yeah.
it's just you set up SSH.
That's what I'm 30 minutes. Then I'm getting another.